We have 4 conversations every day on Nation. We are on to our 3rd conversation, and which is going to be about education and the competency-based curriculum, which has been being rolled out for a number of years. Now we have students who are in junior secondary, so we have grade 7s, we have grade 8s, and we have grade 9s. Now, then next year, we move into senior secondary.
Okay.
This thing that we've been talking about, senior secondary, you know, it's about competence. It's about career pathways.
Yes.
I mean, are you, very well equipped to be a musician? Because I think, wewe hakuna haja tukwambie ufanye biology. And, your strong points, your interest, your everything, every bit of you
is music.
So let's have you going into a path that leads you into becoming excellent in music. And we call that arts and sports science. No. Yeah, we call that arts and sports science.
Yes.
Under that, there's a track called arts, where you shall have music and dance, theater and film, and fine art. Okay? And that's where now your secondary school, you'll be studying creative arts, social studies, you'll learn the English, Swahili, or sign language. You'll have other languages. That's where you are not going to be bothered with, that is, doing math, science, chemistry, physics. No, we are saving you from that headache.
All of that. Okay.
Are you ready for that?
I tried yesterday. I told you, before I went to sleep, I was trying to understand pathways, tracks, all of these things. I was trying to, how many options these learners have, nini. Nikasema, labda nimechoka, ama akili imelala. Let me try again in the morning. Tried again in the morning, and I was like, okay, so far, so good. So far, so good. Then tukaanza pale kwa how many options learners have. I don't know, 12, 7. Nikasema, things are thick over here. Yeah. But I'll begin with something. Mwalimu Eric, you're facing the wrong side of the class. Unapea class mgongo. Phil, cut to Eric.
The wrong side of the class?
Yeah, he's facing the wrong side. There we go. Yes.
My students.
Yes, there we go. That's where.
Where are they?
I don't know where the learners are.
Class.
You're teaching at arts class?
This is a science school.
You're only allowed, is it 15% of learners that can go into arts and mambo ni mingi? Let me not even...
So that's why we have invited Kennedy Echesa, who's an educationist, to come and help us just with this conversation. But of course, you know how we begin the hour. We begin with Newsfix.
Right.
What's in the Newsfix for this hour? There's a lot that's happening, and everything what we talk about the Newsfix is what is a newsroom tracking and what should you look out for. In the previous hour, we talked about today the Cabinet Secretary for Interior is going to be rolling out new armored vehicles to boost security operations in the country. And we said, all right, it would also be good to see that the Internal Security Minister will also be rolling out new housing for our police officers, or, launching psychosocial support in every police station for police officers and so on and so forth. But what in this hour, what are we looking?
Quite a bit. There's a story about a pastor's pain after the 20 million shilling Ruto gift. Now, you saw it on the front page of the Daily Nation as well. The Jesus Winner Ministry founder Edward Moi had to dump his phone that he's had for 15 years after endless calls, mostly from angry youth, demanding answers on a 20 million shilling donation by President William Ruto. The fact that this story has gained so much traction, and he was able to do it, he was able to actually cancel his number, it says something about how we are led to make accountability a thing now. It's no longer a thing that goes over your head. Yeah. It's like, okay, 20 million was given to you, allegedly. Where's the money? He says, no, I haven't received anything.
It doesn't just come and pass.
Right. There's also another one, another news fix as far as CS Maraga is concerned. CJ Maraga.
Former CJ.
CJ Emeritus. Now, the 14th Chief Justice and former President of the Supreme Court of Kenya will be speaking at the People's Dialogue Festival, which is taking place at Uhuru Park. The theme of the event is on building collaborative democracy for Kenya's sustainable future. Again, we're building collaborative democracy for Kenya's sustainable future. David Maraga was very, very vocal as a Chief Justice, also very liberal, did a lot of great things for the judiciary at his time. What does a collaborative democracy mean as we dialogue? What is a collaborative democracy? Is it all arms working together? The people, the judiciary, the executive, the legislature? Is it the parties working together? It's just those guys up there? Or ni sisi wote?
Let us see what he will say. Let's see what he'll say. Right, Kennedy, karibu sana.
Asante.
Thank you for joining us so we can fix the nation together.
Thanks.
And have this conversation about education and what education is all about. And we're seeing the rollout of CBC has been going on now. The junior secondary is full. We shall be moving into senior secondary, and there are questions there. Begin, our colleague Janet, who's not in, we call her Janwama Quotes, has left me with a quote for today.
Okay.
And this one, just listen. So the person who said these words is a former president of a country in Southern Africa. He was in prison for a number of years. That's it, I've given you the person. Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. Who said that?
Nelson Mandela, President Emeritus.
Kabisa. Now here we are discussing education being the most powerful which you can use to change the world. Kennedy, so far, since the rollout of CBC, are you seeing as if we're equipping our children with the most powerful weapon that they shall use to change the world?
I think we are taking away the weapon from our children. Education used to be an equalizer. Education used to be the key to anything that a Kenyan child would want. Education used to be the key, but the government seems to have changed the padlock and is now changing the homesteads. It was a bad idea to roll out the CBC in the manner in which we rolled it out. And the question will be asking, have we had learning for the past 3 years? We've had junior secondary. My response will be, it has been at 20%. As these children go to senior secondary, my heart goes out to teachers who will attend to them in the senior secondary. They'll require patience, they'll require restraint and extra commitment. Simply because learning has not been going on in the junior secondary.
What do you mean, Bon?
What I mean
What
is...
have our kids been doing in school?
They've been growing, generally. And
Growing.
They've been growing. Here we are, Eric. You are being taught home science by a person who trained to teach mathematics at the university. A person who has never been taught home science in any class. What have you been learning? You've not been learning anything. Most of these junior secondary schools have about 2 to 3 teachers who are teaching
Per school or per class?
per school, who are teaching 11 learning areas in the 3 classes. I know of several schools which have 1 teacher of CRE covering 11 learning areas. There is a school in Emuhaya constituency which has only 1 teacher, a junior secondary, and this teacher is supposed to teach 3 classes, that is grade 7, 8, and 9, and teach all the learning areas. You know that mathematics has not been our thing. The 4 of us here in studio, including gentlemen there, if you picked our certificates, don't be surprised that you'll get a D or a D+ in mathematics, despite our prowess in other subjects. So I am a teacher of CRE. I had an E in mathematics. I have been deployed to teach a junior secondary, and I've been assigned to teach mathematics in grade 7, grade 8, and grade 9. What am I teaching to learners?
That's those numbers already. You said there's a school
With one
teacher.
teacher,
teaching grade 7, 8, 9.
and 11 learning areas.
So 33 lessons. I mean,
Yes.
33 curricula, 33 lesson plans, 33 tests to administer.
Yes, and so what you do, you don't go to all the classes. You pick priority. That today I will teach grade 7. Tomorrow I come, go to grade 8. Tomorrow I'll go to grade 9. And the rest, you ask them to do what we were asked to do, read the comprehension and the question that follows. Collect your books. Next day, exchange amongst yourselves. Let us mark. It has been that way across, and I can tell you that I visited one school called St. Peter's Primary School, where the headmistress was so candid to tell me that if they left junior secondary to the teachers by government, the school will lose out. So the arrangement was the primary school section teachers had volunteered to go and teach junior secondary. So how many schools have the capacity in this country to send their primary section teachers to go and teach the junior secondary? So as we prepare to roll out grade 10, grade 11 and 12 in senior secondary, we must be prepared to correct the mess that has been created in our junior secondary. Otherwise, we move that way, we are going to disadvantage children who have gone to public schools for their junior secondary. Remember, private schools have the capacity to hire their teachers based on the competencies to offer an effective curriculum.
Quick one. What happened, and I know, but I just want to hear it from you, to the interns who are meant to be teaching SS and to be turned into permanent teachers, permanent employees of the TSC?
Very few of them were turned into permanent employees. And remember, being an intern teacher has not been very attractive. The package is 18,000 shillings a month. Boards of management in the current secondary schools pay around 18 to 20,000. So it is more profitable to go and teach under the boards of management terms in a senior secondary school today than to be employed by government as an intern. The people who had been retained as interns, only half of them have been absorbed into permanent and pensionable terms.
Half of how many?
Half of the, I think there were 25,000. So they absorbed the 25,000, which is not very encouraging.
You see, even if we said that, yes, we have interns who are being paid as, and treated as interns, then we have these who have been absorbed, in total, the number of teachers, intern plus permanent teachers, is still far short.
Very short.
Of the number that's needed for this. When the president was rolling out, well, after he was sworn in, he said, okay, I've set up this education sector working group to look at what we need to do. Because at that point, there was this whole politics of whether our junior secondary is going to be domiciled in secondary school or in primary school. People saying these kids are too young to go to secondary school. Can they just remain in the primary school environment and so on and so forth? They said, let them go to primary. The government embarked on this project of recruiting teachers. And yeah, we'll have a soundbite of President William Ruto when he was saying, this is what we are doing to employ teachers. Let's just deal with the issue of teachers in junior secondary. So we look at the quality of learning that's going on in junior secondary, and then we start gazing into what's coming up in senior secondary. The soundbite by President William Ruto earlier, was it this year or last year?
Government must employ many teachers, retool them, and even teachers who are in primary, who have gone for diploma and degrees, they are capable of teaching the junior school. Let them take over so that we don't have a problem in staffing.
Honorable members, by 2022, the education sector was in a crisis with a lack of clarity in transition to the competence-based curriculum, a shortage of 110,000 teachers, and 23 out of 40 public universities were technically bankrupt and at risk of closure. To address this issue in our education sector, we have already hired, as you know, members, 56,000 teachers and are in the process of recruiting another 20,000 by January next year. We have also ensured the seamless transition of learners from primary to junior secondary and domiciled grade 7, 8, and 9 in primary school, optimizing the use of existing infrastructure, ensuring the safety of young learners, and protecting parents from the high costs associated with boarding schools far away.
Okay, yeah, so some teachers have been employed, some teachers have been deployed. They are far too short of the number that's required.
You know, Eric, the issue of teachers being employed is a fallacy. Okay. The teachers who are retained by TSC on permanent and pensionable terms are teachers who are already in their system as interns. TSC has not employed anyone, any new teacher, and therefore the shortage remains. The figures I was giving you of 1 to 3 teachers in every junior secondary was there before the so-called employment. So the employment we are speaking about is the formalization of engagement under PNP terms. And therefore the crisis that was there in 2022 has deepened. It was a young crisis. Today it is a mature crisis. Yes.
Now you're dealing with 3 million children.
Yes.
With the same number of teachers.
With the same number of teachers.
Before we even talk number, we have so much to talk about. I want to know what this does for these learners who are in grade 7, grade 8, grade 9. What has this, the shortage of teachers, the confusion over even where the JSS, the junior secondary schools should be domiciled. What has that meant for their education? And long term, what does that mean for their education, transitioning into secondary, into senior secondary, transitioning into higher education, all of that? What does that mean for the economy of Kenya in 10 years?
One, they say, people who are against 844 said that 844 used to give us half-baked
Graduates and learners, yeah.
I think CBC is giving us learners who are not baked at all because of the crisis of the shortage of teachers. We are getting learners who are ill-prepared to join senior secondary, meaning if they're ill-prepared, they'll not be able to transit from senior secondary to colleges and pursue what they'll have chosen as their career paths. How do you even choose a career path as a student in junior secondary who has not been taught by any science teacher? Does it mean, and science has been the most hit. And then they're saying that 60% will be placed in STEM. Where are you going to get this 60% to go to STEM when we've not had people in the junior secondary to prepare learners who would have wished to go to STEM? So we are going to live a lie for the next 3 years in what we call the senior secondary. And these effects will be felt in the next 7 to 10 years when the learners currently in the junior secondary will now be transiting into their so-called professional lives. Right. Remember, it is from this lot that we will get teachers. We're going to have a teacher of chemistry in the year 2034 who was never taught proper science in junior secondary, who was not exposed to any laboratory in senior secondary, and who was pushed through the university or college to become a teacher because at the end of a season, we must train some teachers. So the economy is going to feel the things that we are doing today, the mess we are creating today in the education sector will have adverse effects in the economy in the next 10 years.
We have to go on a short break. I would love to hear from parents, and I see some questions already coming on YouTube, who have learners in junior secondary school, who have learners who are meant to be transitioning right now. What is your pain point? What is happening? What are your worries? And of course, we'll pose some of the questions to Ken as we try and figure out what this transition also looks like. Eric has yesterday's Daily Nation. He tried to break down what the transition looks like, and it's confusing. Let me just say, first of all, it's so confusing. You get the intention and you get where we're coming from, but there's so much information. All of that will be when we come back. Hashtag remains Fixing the Nation and TV. We'll be back after this. We also want to hear from you. As far as matters education are concerned, the CBC curriculum has caused a lot of confusion since inception, and now we're having a transition from JSS to SSS, Senior Secondary School. Call us on 0719-038-858. Let us know what challenges you're experiencing as a learner, a parent, what you expect as a teacher as well, because we've talked about the understaffing. And of course, we're with Kennedy Echesa, who is an educationist, trying to figure out what this transition from JSS to SSS will look like. Like we said, we tried to go through it.
Yeah.
There's pathways, there's tracks.
It's just a lot.
There's roads, I don't know.
There's a lot. You know, actually, the Presidential Working Party on Education Reforms, when they came back, they said, let's rename this thing. The entire primary school architecture from the early child learning to the primary to the junior secondary, we are going to call that thing comprehensive school. And we're not going to have secondary anywhere. It's junior school. And then when they go to grade 10, we're not going to call it secondary anywhere.
Okay.
It's senior school.
Okay. So we're moving from junior school to senior school.
Yes.
And then before that, comprehensive.
The whole thing of the
ECD.
ECD primary, junior school is comprehensive school.
Okay.
Also, it has one headmaster for a comprehensive school. And then you go into secondary school, where now it's junior, is the secondary, senior.
You know what's happening?
School.
We are chasing education, but education is running faster.
It's just all over.
Why is the goalpost?
It's just all over the place.
Shifting.
Jin Mike says, teacher shortage is the menace. I know of a school without a grade 8. They only had one teacher employed by TSC. The primary is also understaffed, so they couldn't assist. Parents who had children in grade 7 pulled them out and took them to other schools. Luckily this year, they got 2 interns, so at least they'll be able to juggle between grade 7 and grade 9. Children are totally messed up. There's also the issue of textbooks for 7 and 8. They rationalize some learning areas. They have not provided rationalized books. Teachers are Googling notes, emerging teachers in those marginalized areas. Chaos in junior school, then senior school. Tomorrow, the Cabinet Secretary for Education will be in Machakos, where he will be launching the framework for transition into senior school. The launch will pave way for countrywide dialogue in all 47 counties that will take place in just from the 9th to the 15th of March. How many days are those?
9th to 15th.
Yes,
That's about
just
6
days,
actually.
yeah.
6 days for you to give feedback on this thing. Here is the thing. Learners who are in grade 9 today will select senior schools based on the career pathways that they intend to pursue. The 3 pathways are STEM, where the Ministry of Education intends to place 60% of the learners. The second pathway is the arts and sports science, where 15% will go to that. And the third pathway is the social sciences pathway, where 25% of students will go there.
Okay.
Now, this was a story in yesterday's Daily Nation, and it was just the big one on the back page, right? And then they started looking at, so what are these pathways looking like? How do you even select those pathways? Now, how do you go to school? Learners are expected to select 7 schools, which they will be placed as the first choice pathway and track. Then 3 for their second choice pathway and track. 2 for their third choice pathway and track. 9 of these schools will be boarding schools. 4 from the learner's home county, 5 from outside their home county or county of residence. The remaining 3 will be day schools in their home, sub-county or county of residence. Senior schools, which will be the current secondary schools, will be categorized based on 3 factors: the career pathway that they offer, the accommodation type, and the gender and special needs education consideration.
I think they're just using linguistics to cover the confusion around this transition. Because when they tell us that they're going to categorize these schools based on their boarding status and so forth, they have run away from the so-called national schools, extra-county schools, county schools, sub-county schools. They now want to categorize them using the boarding criteria, which does not make sense at all. And secondly, they are asking learners to make 7 options as they transit of senior secondary schools. What the minister ought to be telling us is the criteria he will be using to classify the paths that institutions will offer. We have institutions that have different abilities. We have institutions like the national schools today, and every county has 2 national schools, girls and boys. Those schools have the capacity to offer all the pathways because government over time has seriously invested resources in them. We have the day schools or the so-called sub-county schools that are not, strictly speaking, well equipped to offer any pathway.
Any?
They are not equipped to offer any pathway. In fact,
At least they have a field. So
they have a field. They can offer PE.
Sports and recreation.
Just a percentage of sports and recreation. I know of some that have
music and dance, theatre and film and fine art. At least a sub-county school, Mama chini ya mti, sing.
Music and
bar
arts is not about singing like you're in a funeral or in a church somewhere. In the way, it is going to be the most expensive pathway that this country needs to invest in.
Agreed.
But the assumption of the ministry, which is wrong and misleading, is that pathways such as arts and social sciences, where we have music, are now going for the day schools, where we have trees and learners can be taught how to sing under a tree. That was not what CBC
speaks to our perception of the arts as a whole, because we think they're low budget. Just before you continue, I want to take you back a little bit. I want to know what informed this decision. When you say 60% of learners are going into STEM, you've decided for them. I've decided for you as a cohort, 60% of you, you're going into STEM, 25 are going into social sciences, 15 into arts and sports. What informed that decision? Are you aware of what informed the decision? Was there any data that said, a good chunk of our learners in grade 7, 8, 9 are interested in STEM, therefore we need to find a way to transition them into this? Or was it just a guess? Or was it like our economic needs for the next 10, 20 years are that we need a labor force that is heavily STEM? So let's put 60%. Like, talk about it. That's my
I think it was based on the strategic desire of the nation and the implementers of the curriculum. If we were to go by the figures available, our education system and our learners are geared towards social sciences, arts, and sports. Take, for instance, last year, placement in the universities. How many students were we able to send to STEM at the university level? Or how many qualified? It will give you the reverse of what these regulations are going to give us. And again, we've said it is CBC, where placement is based on talent. Education is competency. Why are you making a wrong assumption that in this country, 60% are tailored to be STEM, and then 25% social sciences, and then 15% arts and social sciences? But this reminds me of one thing. When His Excellency the President was Deputy President, he attended a heads conference in Mombasa and is on record having made a very funny joke, said, why are we teaching our learners when Vasco da Gama arrived at the coast, when the same learners cannot fix bulbs in their classrooms? In essence, the president was trying to tell us that, you see, it is important to tell our learners, teach them how to fix their local problems than teaching them about history. And I remember teachers of history and professors of history saying history is just as important as
fixing
mathematics.
a bulb, yeah.
But again, it is good for a nation to be geared towards STEM. The question is, how prepared are we to implement this STEM and handle the 60% of the learners we want to place in STEM? You want to place 60% of learners in STEM when 70% of your schools have no functional laboratories, when 50% of your schools have no teachers to teach science subjects. Are you aware that today you may not get a teacher of home science? In fact, from graduation, all of them are absorbed. And home science has been categorized under STEM. Where are you going to get teachers to teach home science?
So what should we do? Are you two saying that we should look at our tujiangalie and therefore say, let's not even think about categorization, let's leave it open? Because there has got to be a strategy. We talk about, are we training for the current and future market? Are we training for current and future? Just like you said, countries look at, let's go STEM. Yes. Let's also have these other, paths that encourage this. I would argue that so far, this country has actually just not sort of focused silently, but focused on STEM.
Yes.
And that's why the big push is mathematics is going to be compulsory. Is that you'll have to have at least 2 sciences that you take. Yes. Is that you have to have then a language or 2, all right? But the current focus has just been on STEM. That's why they also say that in all of these clusters that you choose for to go to university, because you are forced to take mathematics and a science and all, that then impacts on your overall grade, then that also impacts on your ability or chances of getting into university, whether you're going to university to study language and literature or to go and study medicine. It affected you at secondary school.
Right.
So at this point where we are saying, okay, no, there are some areas where at secondary school you do not have to be graded on math, so that you go and do language and literature.
Right.
It's a good
Eric,
thing.
intention, as always, amazing.
Okay.
Intention, as always, amazing. The logic behind that is not flawed. Pastor Sata, you need your basics for everything, right? Your languages, your social sciences, and your STEM. But past a certain point, you should be able to narrow down and figure out, what am I doing with my life? Can I specialize in that? Yeah. There's no need of a weighted average where your sciences are dragging you down or your social sciences are dragging you down. That makes perfect sense. I think the issue here is, how do you come to this? How do you staff for this? How do you make sure that the education system is prepared so you're not having so many learners go through this system and come out not unbaked, not even half-baked? Are we equipped for that? When we say 60% of learners are going into STEM, what informs that decision? My idea would be, I know it's utopian, first of all, but is it possible to, at a county level or at a ward level, make sure that you have enough resource in every school to cater for every type of learner? Be they a STEM learner who's going into that path, be they going, if they're going into arts, if they're going into social sciences, so that it's not so much me deciding 60% of you will do this, 20% of you will do this. It's competency based. If you're good at it, if you're interested in it, go do the STEM.
But you see, ladies and gentlemen, CBC, to say the truth, is a very good curriculum if it were to be implemented in a conducive environment where resources are available, both human and material. It's just like a diet. You know, the three of us can afford to talk about a balanced diet. When we're having our breakfast, we take into consideration a balanced diet. But we have a majority of Kenyans whose desire is not about the diet, it's about a meal, at least a day. Why can't we allow people who can afford a balanced diet to go to Hilton and Sarova Stanley, and also allow those who have nothing to go to River Road and get some githeri and survive? Why are we forcing this diet called CBC across
because we care about our learners. Education is
and
a unifying...
in effect, you will have people going hungry. Because you are saying, if you do not have this balanced diet, do not touch any meal. We are going to starve people in the name of prayer.
How so?
No.
It is because... So saying...
Sorry, can I stop you? Just for
primary.
1 second, we can take a call. Sorry, just for 1 second. Let's take a call. I think, is his name also Kennedy? Phil? Kadere
from
Kitale. Sawa. Good morning, Kadere.
Yes, good morning.
All right. Do you have a question for Kennedy or you want to contribute to our CBC conversation?
Kwanza wacha ni wasalimu sana. Kuna rafiki yangu hapo Eric Latif, tulikuwa naye Capital FM, best wangu sana.
Tumesalimika.
Na wasalimu wote hapo Echesa na wewe mtangazaji, kazi yenu nzuri sana. Let me
Mariam.
say this.
Yes.
Mariam,
yeah.
Mimi nasema hivi, CBC mimi naona ni wazazi tu wanasoma, si wanafunzi. Because mzazi hata ajui kitu, kuna wazazi wale analog hawakusoma. Alafu mwalimu anapea mtoto homework akapelekee mzazi mwenye ajui kitu. Inakuwa ni ngumu sana. So mimi nasema hii Kenya masomo imekufa, afya imeuawa. So inakuwa ngumu sana hata hiyo mtoto wakisoma. Hakuna mahali wataenda huko nje kujisaidia kimaisha. Hawezi enda America huko ng'ambo abroad kazi. Because hii vitu wanasoma ni vitu vile hata havina value. Unaona? So mimi hata ningesema, alafu kuna kitu inaitwa junior secondary. Hata wewe ukisikia junior, inamaanisha junior secondary. Inafaa watoto hao wakuwa wanasoma kwa secondary school. Sasa unapata junior secondary kwa primary. Sasa walimu wa primary kufunza hii watoto wa junior secondary, it has bring confused even in school. Watoto wamerundikana huko, sasa hiona vacancy iko kwa secondary. Hakuna form 1 iko vacancy huko. Na huku kwa primary watoto wamejaa. Sasa unashangaa wakubwa wetu hao wamesoma, lakini vitu ile wanatufanyia is not valuable to us. Watoto hao kusoma tu ni kusomesha tu, because hakuna mahali wanaenda. Sisi ndo
Asante sana Patrick. I mean, this is just the feedback. He's at that point. He's like, where's the value? Where is the money?
Na wazazi ndio wanasoma.
How much is
I wanted to complete my argument that this diet is for the rich. Let us say Moi Avenue Primary, because it's within CBD and the government does not want embarrassment, will ensure it has sufficient teachers, sufficient infrastructure. But go to a school in a village in Nyandarua that has no infrastructure, that has no teachers. But students go to school every day. And assessment is school-based. The teacher who is not well equipped content-wise to teach that learner is the same teacher who is going to assess the same learner. Do you expect that teacher to downgrade that particular learner? The response is a no. I've not been teaching mathematics. I had an A in mathematics. I trained to teach CR where I got an A. But I've been teaching mathematics in X primary school. I have to assess this mathematics, and it is my assessment. No one supervises it. who then will ensure that there is quality. What is going to happen is that at the end of the 3 years, we're going to have learners who have gone through the system called junior secondary, but content-wise, there is nothing to show and prove.
Okay, so what's the issue here? The issue is on quality control, number one.
Yes.
The issue is on equity.
Yes.
And making sure that a school in the CBD of Nairobi and a school in a village in Nyandarua are the same.
Are the same of the same
That a
resources.
child in Nairobi and a child in Nyandarua are treated the same.
Yes.
Okay?
Oh, yes.
And those are, I agree with you, those are areas that we need to be discussing and focusing and throwing.
Yes.
How do we fix it? We have children now in school. We have children who are going to grade 10 next year. As we speak today, Kennedy, I don't know what school you went to, but in the area that you went to school, that inequality existed.
It did.
In the area that you went to school, a village school had fewer teachers employed by TSC than a town school, an urban school, than a school that had a national outlook. This thing has persisted. How do we fix it?
I think the difference between the inequities in our days, I went to school in primary school between 1995 and 2002. The difference was, one, the curriculum was largely affordable, even by the poor. Why am I saying so? It is because the materials involved, government would at least provide books across, and the teachers were evenly distributed.
They were not. I will tell you that for a fact. They were not. Even today, teachers are not evenly distributed.
They're not even distributed.
There's a study that's done by an organization called, I think, Elimuyetu.
Yes.
It just looks at the distribution of teachers. And you will find that in sub-county schools, especially in secondary schools, sub-county schools, 30% of teachers, 30% are from TSC teachers.
Yes.
So a school has to employ the rest 60% BOM teachers.
Yes.
Cheap.
Yes. And the so-called UTs, untrained teachers that used to serve us.
So 30% in a sub-county school. And when you go to a national school, you'll find 90% TSC teachers distribution.
And
you'll go to a national school, you'll find labs. You'll go to a sub-county school, you'll not find a lab.
it is true.
You'll find one lab that serves everything. It's a chemistry lab, it's a physics lab, it's
Home
a biological
science,
lab, it's a home science place, it's everything. And it does not have the Bunsen burners.
It is true. But we're aware that that curricula allowed equity. That a student who worked hard in a day school then had the equal chances of success compared to the student who was in a well-equipped
It
school.
was not equal chance of success.
If you worked hard at a personal level.
It doesn't matter how hard you work, Kennedy. If you only have 30% TSC, highly qualified teachers, if you are going to a classroom or to a lab only once a week
Yes.
to do titration,
Yes.
and a child in Alliance is going to a lab 3 times a week to do titration, the exam will come, KCSE, same.
Yes. Yes.
And you're expected to perform as if.
Eric, are you saying
It has never been equal.
those learners who had airplane in village schools those days had a problem?
No.
Not at all. Just
There
that
is
there
no
were
problem.
exceptions. I want to pause
They
a little
are
bit. There's another
exceptional.
caller.
They were not treated fairly and equally. Inequity in our education system has been there
historical.
since the day
Gents, wacha tuchukue simu kidogo. Wacha tuchukue simu. There's a caller from Migori. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you, NTV?
We're very well. Do you have a question for Kennedy or a comment?
I have a comment at the same time. I have a question. Just my comment is this. I've heard Kennedy telling you were telling Kennedy that the CBC is there and you care for them. This government don't care at all, because if you compare what we are having now with the old system of 844, the 844 could serve both in the rural and in the urban areas, and you will still find that the performance will have somehow come in the same rate. But today, if you check what the CBCs are using, the materials, go back to the rural, Kabisa. Do you think they still have this material whereby they can get still the same education as the people who are in urban?
No.
And what Kennedy is saying is very nice. What he's talking about, the diet. Let the people use the river road to survive. And those who can manage the international school to manage international schools. Because we have lack of teachers in the first place. You go to these schools, the materials we cannot manage. The economy is poor. The economy is bad, and the parents cannot even afford to buy the materials that we need. The rate that the parents are buying books today, it can cover the fees that we used to pay during the 844.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you so much, Robert. We just have to wrap up the conversation because the hour is over. But my pushback with this argument of if you can afford the githeri, have your githeri. If you can afford your, I don't know, mixed meat platter, have your mixed meat platter. Education is meant to be the equalizer. Yep. That is the very basis, the very reason why we push for free primary education, for higher education to be affordable, is it's meant to be an equalizer.
In the process of making it an equalizer, you don't make it exclusionary to exclude those who cannot compete in the system.
True.
What we're saying is, we've had this British curriculum, what curriculum, GCSE exams. They have been existing within 844. So that those parents who felt 844 was too weak for their children, it was too inferior for their children, will go to Breban and pay for those extra curriculum. But today, we have more of a foreign curriculum in the name of CBC that requires most resources, well-equipped human resource, but the nation is not able to afford its component, and the parents too are not able to afford their components. So who are we pushing for this CBC? Is it better we have a curriculum, though inferior in the eyes of the West or others, but can be afforded by the nation and get out people like me and you, or have a more superior curriculum and only get 10% out of 100% of learners?
Why not ask the nation to afford?
I'll tell you what's better.
Yes.
Put the money so that our education system serves every child of this country equally.
If the government is unwilling to do that,
700 billion shillings, account for every shilling of that 700 billion shillings and ensure equity. If you need an extra one to take it to 1 trillion shillings, fine. Close some offices here in Nairobi. You can reduce the ministries to 5. You do whatever you need to do. Children are the most important citizen in this country. Because they are the future. We cannot be playing games with
our future.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, Kennedy. Yeah, we really appreciate you joining us this morning. We've been talking to Kennedy Echesa. He's an educationist. And the next conversation is Shika Mic, where we give one of you, our community of fixers, the mic. You come here, we'll give you the mic to bring an issue.